Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Daniel Lucas, former endurance athlete, inventor, founder of the Sprout Spout, host of the Chasing Energy podcast. And he is a lifelong learner, passionate about unlocking human potential through nutrition, fitness, and mindset. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hi, Jay. Grateful to be here, buddy. Let's help some people.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Daniel. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about simplifying healthy living. But before we come to this, let's understand a bit more about you, Daniel, about your background, about your journey, so that people know who they are listening to.
Absolutely. So you want to know basically my background. My
Yes.
background is as far as health. Did not take care of myself when I was in my 20s and early 30s, and I realized it was a very bad path for me. I was in chronic pain, and then about the age of 30, I ran my first mile without first time I ran more than a mile. And over the next couple of years, I started to see the value of taking care of my body. And then I became a marathoner, then an endurance athlete, an ultra endurance athlete. So I ran the ultras and Ironman and stuff like that. And I really started focusing on nutrition at that point. By the time I was getting in my late 30s, I realized the bigger part of the equation wasn't just the training and lifting, it was the nutrition. And in the last 5 years, I have committed myself to sharing that message with people and helping them make smart decisions about living a long-term, sustainable, healthy life.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And your uh, mission in life is to make healthy living more accessible.
That's exactly right. Make it
I want to
convenient for people,
understand
keep it simple.
convenient for people. So the most convenient is to, people say that live in natural environments, and people are living in natural environments, and that is where it is very good. So why has it become so difficult for people to, uh, uh, living healthy has become so difficult, and that you have to make it accessible? Help us understand, who is to blame? Is it ourselves? Is it someone else? Is it the market? How does it work?
We could talk about blame, but I think the bigger thing is whose responsibility is it? And in the end, whether it's, the big companies that are tricking you into eating the sugary foods or, the accessibility of these things, the bigger point is that each individual listening to this message today needs to say, I take ownership of my own health. And when you talk about living in a natural environment, I think specifically in America, it is very difficult to focus on getting whole foods. And by whole foods, I want to be really specific. That means you can hold the food up in your hand and pretty much know what it is. If it's been turned into a circle or shape or things like that, it's been what we call ultra processed. So it's not a question of who's to blame that I'm really after. It's more of whose responsibility is. Hint, it's your responsibility to live a healthy life because you stand to get the benefits as well as the people around you. And making that simple is being disciplined before you need to be. And so that means one of the number one tips for people I give that are trying to take control of their health is whoever in your family is the most responsible needs to be the one who does the grocery shopping. Because if you're bringing those ultra processed foods home that are high in sugar, you're going to eat them. You're putting them within range. So the better thing is don't rely on your willpower. Willpower is fleeting. Put yourself in a position to succeed by removing those temptations from arm's reach. And the same goes for your training. If you want to take control of your health, then you do things like put your work clothes in the car the night before so that you don't even basically everything's laid out for you to where you get out of the bed, you head to the gym or go for your run or whatever.
Right, right. So how can one get started with this particular thing? Because there is so much of confusion and complexity, even with regards to any sort of advice that we get, either in terms of nutrition, either in terms of health, So people get confused. Even the simplest of advice, if you tell them about processed foods, then they will talk about something else. Then again, so the third person will tell, okay, but there is this is what you can do. This is again in, and at the end, what happens is an individual gets, very confused, and so
Mhm.
they end up taking any action at all. So in that situation, and that is a situation for a lot of people, including in this part of the world also, how should they take action which is, not detrimental to their health, and not only for the benefit of some people, some companies, and rather it is good for themselves. But they cannot go to the jungle, so they have to start somewhere. What are the do's and don'ts of a naturally simply simple sort of a way to take care of
Sure.
it?
Yeah. So the do's and don'ts of a natural system. I'd say the first thing is don't try to achieve dramatic results. Anytime you go for dramatic results, there's almost always a consequence to that. And I can speak for Americans; they are very driven by dramatic results. They don't want a nice and easy improvement cycle. Most of them want, I need to lose 20 pounds by the wedding that's or the beach party that's in 30 or 40 days. How do I dramatically get that off? Those things always come with a whiplash. Statistics have proven over and over and over that people end up putting on more weight after the little binge cycle is over. So, how do people keep it simple? That's what I want to focus on here. And that is stop aiming for dramatic results and just be a little bit better each day. If you want to know an exercise program, here's the simplest one I can offer you. Move 1 hour a day, meaning you can walk, if you're comfortable running, fine. If you're comfortable biking, fine. But just be outside moving 1 hour a day. I put a higher value on spending time outside when you do movement because it's better for your mental health than say a treadmill and staring at a screen. But at any point, movement is better than non-movement, right? And being outside is better than inside. But these are splitting hairs. I'm saying if you want to keep it simple, you need to move an hour a day. I'm not specifying whether that's weightlifting, walking, running. Move an hour a day. And then going back to the diet part, are 80% of the foods you eat in their natural form that they occurred. So I'm not even telling you keto, Mediterranean diet, vegan, all those things. It's just, is the food in the natural form? So if it's a chicken breast, that's its natural form. A chicken McNugget is not the natural form. So that's an example. And for things like fruits and vegetables, that should be a no-brainer. You look at it, it's the way that nature made it. You can eat it.
Right, right. And what about mindset? You talked about
Yeah.
movement. What about mindset? Does mindset come first, then the movement happens, or does movement come first and then the mindset gets better?
First of all, I can never answer that question universally because it depends so much on the person you're talking to. Some of these people who want to get things to the next level, they have a good mindset. They just need information. But I would say the majority of people are not in the right mindset because they're looking for dramatic results. They're looking for an easy button. I'll give you another example. They want to get a six pack because they've been staring at Instagram and they're like, oh, I just want to get a six pack like this person. Those goals are very anti-cathartic, which means you're not enjoying the journey. You're just going for some checkbox. And when you hit that checkbox, you're usually so burnt out that you're ready to quit. Another example would be, well, I've never ran and I signed up for a half marathon. That's usually a sign you're going to burn out pretty quick. If you happen to complete the half marathon, you're probably going to burn out. So when we talk about mindset, I want you to realize I'm talking about leveraging your willpower in a way that is sustainable. And that means realizing that you're not going to be able to eat, tuna 3 meals a day and cayenne and lemon water and somehow sustain that. Your body's going to revolt, your energy is going to get low. So instead focus on, I'm going to get 80% of my food in its natural form and I'm going to move an hour a day. Those are very simple rules, and simple rules are easy to follow. Here's another example of a simple rule. I don't have my morning coffee until I did a 20-minute walk. You're putting the reward of a coffee and right basically in the way, the walk is in the way of that reward. When you put success in the way, as James Clear says, if you put success in the way, it's much more easy to achieve. If you do stuff like say, well, first I'm going to go to Starbucks, then I'm going to read my newspaper, and then I'm going to go to the gym. What happens? You get there, you get comfortable, you turn to the next page, and then you're like, you know what? I'm learning so much from this newspaper that I could spend another 10 minutes here. And by the time you realize, well, there's really no point in go to the gym for just 20 minutes. I'll just get to it the next day. You need to put success in the way, whether it's walking first, spending time with your family, whatever it is, put success in the way so that it's more convenient for you to achieve those things.
Right. And in terms of nutrition, again, Daniel, should we have to get down to a situation where we have to, cultivate our own fruits and vegetables? Is that one of the solutions? Because this pesticide problem is also rising to a lot of extent, and we just don't know about the natural aspect of any of the things that are available. Forget about in the US, even in India,
Yeah.
we can, especially in the cities,
Mhm.
sometimes we can face this issue. And so a lot
Okay.
and more people are talking nowadays about, building up terrace garden, getting a land,
Yeah.
building up, some sort of.
Homesteaders.
Is
They're
that,
called homesteaders. Yeah.
yes,
So I'll use that as a segue. I wasn't really going to talk about my product, but I invented this device during COVID, and it's called the Sprout Spout. And the idea is that the most nutrient dense food on the face of the earth is broccoli sprouts. And when you grow other sprouts like mung bean sprouts, alfalfa, those are so nutrient dense in your micronutrients, the nutrients the body needs. And what I would say to you is if you're wanting to take control of it, this is what I meant by making it accessible. In 4 days, you fill this entire jar with sprouts from seeds. Okay. It's super simple. It's less than 30 seconds a day. And so when I preach to you about putting success in the way, this is what I'm talking about. To where I basically set this thing on my counter every morning. I've got 2 of them running downstairs that are full of sprouts. And I rinse them. And then when they're done, I put them in a 1-gallon Ziploc, and I have 2 huge bags of sprouts every single week that I like, okay, I've made these. Now I'm going to throw in my salads and wraps. It's convenient. I don't have to go to the grocery store. I don't have to go to the farmer's market. And it's the most nutrient dense food that I can possibly consume. So that's what I mean by putting success in the way. It costs you about 50 cents a day to do this. I'm not against people doing. In fact, I'm all for if you want to do your own garden and stuff like that. I just don't have the time for it, quite frankly. I tried a composting thing. I have a few plants out front, but personally, when it got to like microgreen trays and stuff like that, I found them to be way more work than they were worth. So I stuck with just how could I make the most convenient way to sprout at home? And people were using mason jars, and I noticed that mold and mildew was a huge issue for people who were doing that. So my vision there, AJ, was I want to enable the world to experience the benefit of sprouts without the frustrations of dealing with a mason jar. And the reason that the world wasn't leveraging sprouting was it was too complicated. And after 5 days, all you had was a handful. With this, you get a handful a day. It makes a huge handful every single day. If you've got two sprout sprouts going, you have enough to make an entire salad every single day. So you removes the excuse of saying, I didn't make it to the farmer's market to get my organic greens, and I can't make it to Publix to get the other greens. So I guess I might as well just eat this microwavable dinner or have pizza delivered. Remove those excuses by having it so convenient that it's actually more inefficient to wait for a pizza or microwave a meal.
Right, Daniel. And talking of sprouts are very famous in India. A lot of people have the sprouts in the morning. Maybe we are talking different sort of sprouts, but mainly if you talk about those vegetables.
You're way ahead of America in this respect. And by the way, one of the first things whenever I present, Indians usually come up to me afterwards and say, "This is what we've been telling Americans, that they need to get more sprouts." And I go, "I know, I'm trying to spread the message, man."
Right. So I want to understand about your Sprout Spout. Tell us a bit about what Sprout Spout is all about. And then you showed this particular invention of yours, if I can call it. Tell us a bit more about this so that people can understand this better, make use of of this particular thing?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. The Sprout Spout is we only released it about 4 months ago, and it was took 13 prototypes in about 3 years. I designed it on a napkin during COVID, and it was after I'd thrown out 3 batches of broccoli sprouts. Which broccoli sprouts are not cheap. That's the most expensive sprout. And the reason that it's the most expensive sprout is because it has more antioxidants than anything else out there. It is absolutely loaded. In fact, there was a study in examine.com with 730,000 participants. That is not a small study. And it was a meta study of 30 different studies. And what they ended up finding was for people who ate broccoli at least once a week, they were 35% less likely to develop any type of cancer. That is a major. If a pharma company could claim that, everyone would be taking that pill. But because it's broccoli, people are kind of like, well, as it turns out, broccoli sprouts contain 10 to 100 times the amount of sulforaphane, which is the antioxidant that is in broccoli. So, hint, hint, the most nutrient dense anti-cancer food you eat is broccoli sprouts. And in fact, I didn't discover any of this stuff. I was just a consumer of health podcasts and health information. And what I found was the people who discovered broccoli sprouts, when I heard them being interviewed, they actually admitted during the interviews, I don't grow them because it's too much of a pain in a mason jar. I try to buy them freeze dried and mail order or whatever, spend a fortune to get them, preserved so I don't have to grow them. That was when I realized the world needs a solution to this. And because it was COVID and I had a little bit of time on my hands, I thought, this shouldn't be hard. I very much, very, very, very much underestimated the amount of work it would take to design and bring something new to the world like this that could kind of change the paradigm. That's the idea. And then the other one was I want to be able, if we ever had another pandemic, or if people are just tired of paying a fortune at the farmers markets for foods, that they could take control of their health for 50 cents a day and just grow so much nutrient dense greens that all they have to do is focus on the other foods after that, the fillers, the things that are much more shelf stable, like rice, chicken, vegetables, frozen meats. Those are things that are easy to access. Micronutrients are extremely difficult to access. That's why you can't buy broccoli sprouts at Whole Foods, because they're not shelf stable. And companies don't want to be responsible for something that's not shelf stable.
Absolutely. And in terms, you seem to think a lot from the ground. So, any particular philosophy that you follow for your decision making, for your lifestyle? You've been an endurance athlete, and now you are the founder of Sprout Spout. So, as I said, there is a close connection between, about sprouts, at least from the Indian point of view.
I would say I am a Christian, but I would say if you asked me where most of my philosophies for decision making come, a lot of it is from Stoicism. So Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Ryan Holiday. Those are people who publish. Quite frankly, I think Viktor Frankl with Man's Search for Meaning, that was one of the most prolific books. I remember reading it for the first time like 10 years ago, and then rereading it every year or two, and each time coming away from that and going, there's so much wisdom in here for how I should be addressing opportunities and challenges within my life, which is with Stoicism, I'm going to use my head as the example here. You draw a circle, okay, around what you can control. And then you start to look at, should I be stressing? And, for example, in America, everybody wants to talk about right now is the election. And to me, I go, it's so far out of my particular control, outside of, say, voting, that I'm not going to spend my entire day contrasting who I like or dislike and spreading hate or praise for a particular candidate, because at the end of the day, it's so far outside of the scope of my control. When I look at my day, AJ, for example, I was journaling this morning, and I try to journal in the mornings. I look at what is it specifically that you can move the needle on today. So my philosophy is very much on what do I own and what am I responsible for, and how can I make a difference in those things? When you asked me the first question you asked me today was, who is to blame? And first thing I said was, it doesn't really matter, because it's our responsibility to take control of our health. If they came out tomorrow and said, we have an assembly line in every city that prints free donuts and free pizzas, all you got to do is show up, I can tell you, I would be one of the people that would be like, what is the indirect cost of getting this free thing that they've somehow leveraged AI to solve. So that goes back to, even if it's there, even if it's available, whose responsibility is it to take control of our health? It's not something I count on the government to solve for me. It's not something I count on my kids or my partner to solve. I take full responsibility as the head of the household. This is my responsibility to put healthy food on the table every single day. I cook every single day. So I practice what I preach there.
Wonderful. There's much to learn and understand from you about all these things, Daniel, and I'm sure a lot of things can be understood from your podcast, also Chasing Energy podcast. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so we cover 3 things on the podcast. We cover training. So I'll have a training specialist like lifters, runners, things like that. We cover mindset, which is very much, you think about Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset. Grit, which is Duckworth, I think, wrote Grit, and those are type of resilience type things. So that kind of ties back to Stoicism. And then nutrition. We talk to some people who come in and talk about what are the proper foods. In a lot of cases, when we have a guest, they're going to talk about something that they were suffering from and how their diet or training solved that to where they're living a much more holistic or healthy based lifestyle. I'm no exception. I had chronic back pain. I was on ibuprofen twice a day in my 20s. And that is not a good start. And I was overweight and I was drinking about 2 pots of coffee a day because my justification was, I'm working 12 hours a day. This is what it takes for me to keep going. I could have rationalized that I was doing that for my family, but eventually by the time I hit 30, I was like, by the time I'm 50, I will be basically a complete physical wreck if I keep going down this path. So I took control of that. And as an outcome of that, now I want to spread the message when I see other people suffering and say, there are simple things you can do to take control of your health for the long term. I don't sell this, 30 days to success and 30 days to a slimmer you. I don't subscribe to that. I basically say, what are the things that you can do that are going to give you long-term fulfillment and sustainability without necessarily being so driven to check a box in the next week or 2?
Wonderful. As I said, there is much to learn from you, and so many people would like to connect with you, learn from you, take your help. So what's the best way for them to do so?
So on Instagram, it's at DP Lucas. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I have sproutspout.com is our website. If you just email that goes directly to me. And we have a newsletter on there that we focus on very valuable content on Sproutspout, which is, what is the latest research in sprouts? What is the latest recipes that we can offer you that make healthy living so accessible to you? It's almost more inconvenient not to do it once you know about it. So those are the ways to get a hold of me, and I'm always happy to handle direct questions.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ.